Um, okay, welcome again, and I can see that the class has grown quite a bit in number, even more than last week. So please don't be offended if I don't remember your name straight away. I mean, those who I'm seeing 2 lectures straight, I'm beginning to remember your names, but I will get to it by about week 4, week 5, week 6, I promise. But it's quite difficult to do that, so I ask for your understanding in that. Now, last week we talked about the introduction in terms of market, how market works. I used the example of one-room studio apartments, demand for that, supply of that, and how it can have different arrangements, you know, competitive market. Wang Yijiang, I think I remember, was as a monopolist or a monopolist who can even discriminate or rent control. And then I introduced the notion of this thing called Pareto efficiency. You're at an efficient point where you can't make everybody happy. You have to make one person worse off to be able to make someone better off. Now, having done that, I said we're going to come back to market and how that market works eventually in about 5 to 6 weeks' time. But in the meantime, I think I want to turn to the individuals, each one of you, okay? How you optimize choice and how we can represent that within the realms of economic models, okay? So I'm coming back to this basic economic problem again and again and again. Now, what did I say was the basic economic problem? Does anyone remember? That's why, thank you, and that's why we have something called constrained optimization. In other words, you choose whatever is best for you that you can afford. Correct? Now, so we have to look at your constraint first. Then we can then look at your preference afterwards. Okay? Constraint, preference. Then we can add them together to represent your optimal choice, which I'm currently making lecture notes on in my room, actually. So, from the perspective of the consumer, everyone here is a consumer. I mean, I think I'm going to be killed by my wife, but at the end of last lecture on econometrics, for those who are here, you remember, I used the example of how my wife's spending on cosmetic products is definitely positively related to her spending on shoes. You know, it's like she goes on a shopping spree, binge shopping, or she doesn't. She's very frugal 1 month, and then she would go all in and say, like, I would have coupon deliveries of 9 West and etc. coming in, along with. I'm only bringing this up because those deliveries came actually yesterday, and we had a little bit of a fight, shall we say. But from the perspective of the consumer, what is your constraint? What is your constraint? Clearly, how much money is in your account. It's going to be different from person to person. You know, if your dad is Bill Gates, then that constraint will be somewhere much, much higher up than the rest of us. Or for someone else, it might be different. But income is always your constraint. No dispute on that. Yeah? Now, throughout the analysis, we're going to use a 2 good example, good 1 and good 2. So there are 2 goods in the economy. You might think, hang on, isn't that a little bit simplifying too much? But it doesn't have to be the case, because you can think of good 1 as the main item of interest. It can be your running shoes, or it can be alcohol, or it can be whatever. And good 2, you can just generalize and say anything else that you consume. Okay? In that case, it's not a bad assumption. Yeah? In that case, we call that good something called 복합재 or composite good, but let's not get into that. Okay? Now, let's just. This is a mathematical notation coming in a little bit, but I can't do much about it. let's denote your consumption bundle as X1 and X2, which represents the quantity consumed of each good. Now, those at the econometrics class, I promised that I wouldn't use the food example anymore, but clearly I failed here. So 3 bottles of beer, Cloud or whatever. Actually, I'm on the OCW, so I have to not name each product. And 1 fried chicken might be represented as 3, 1 on the Cartesian 2-dimensional axis. Okay? If the prices of 2 goods are given by P1 and P2, so suppose that 1 bottle of beer costs $3, 1 fried chicken would cost about $12, or actually, if you were to go to, say, for example, a Korean restaurant in London or Geneva, then chicken will be a lot cheaper, but if you want to have a Korean liquor like soju, I'm just out of interest, out of curiosity, can anyone guess how much a bottle of soju costs in Korean galbi restaurant in London? Just have a guess. So if you ever go on a language exchange to England and happen to live in London, and if you see a senior person from Hanyang University, please don't say pai somek. That's saying, please give half of your daily budget to me. So just stick with beer, basically. Cheaper to have a vodka and beer than soju and beer. So essentially, this one simple equation represents, so that's about 8 to 9 pounds. Okay, yeah. The budget constraint is saying money spent on good 1, P1, price times quantity, is money spent on that good, plus money spent on good 2 has to be, at least no greater than your income. Or otherwise, you'll have to file for a loan somewhere, or I don't know. You're basically not in a good place, okay? All this saying is simple. You have to be affordable in your consumption. Yeah, not a difficult requirement. Then every consumption bundle that satisfies this constraint is called a budget set. So it's like this. If you draw a graph, now can anyone tell me why that y-intercept, put it really in simple terms, it's saying how many of good 2 can you buy if you spend all of your money on good 2? In other words, if you spend your monthly saving on chicken alone, how much chicken can you buy? M over P2. And M over P1 represents if you live for a month only on beer. Yeah, I've seen a friend do it for about 2 days, but not a month. Then how many bottles of beer can you buy? Okay, so that's what these intercepts represent. But the slope, look at that, P2, so P1 over P2, P2분의 P1, what that, or from this equation, I rearrange it in terms of x2, then you get this. I mean, it's not difficult. You just throw this to the other side and divide everything by P2, and you get this. Yep. The slope of that budget line, or what that budget line is saying is you're using up your entire income along that line. The slope on that is minus P1 over P2. Now, please remember this minus P1 over P2 because, let me just skip for a little bit. Okay, maybe not. Because that has a very important meaning when it comes to the optimal choice of the consumer. Okay? So the difference between a budget set and a budget line, 예산선과 예산집합이라고 하는데 우리말은 예산집합, 예산선. Budget set is anything that you can buy. But budget line or 예산선 is where you're using up the entirety of your income. You're spending all your money. Your daily allowance is 10,000 won, and you're spending that 10,000 won to the full. Okay? So the slope of that budget line is given by this minus P1 over P2. Now, it is the relative price between two goods. Okay? If the chicken is, say, 3,000 won. No, actually, let's make it more realistic. A bottle of beer is 3,000 won. A whole fried chicken is 15,000 won. Then what that slope implies, or what that relative price of two goods implies is? Exactly. You have to exchange, you have to give up 5 bottles of beer to obtain 1 chicken. In other words, 1 chicken may be exchanged at the market for 5 bottles of beer. Yeah? So let's go over that once again. So it has an important economic meaning. Suppose the consumer wants to increase the consumption of good 1, which is beer in my case, by a little bit. Suppose you want to consume 1 more bottle of beer. Okay? If you're using up all of your income, so you have to give up some amount of good 2. You have to give up a little amount of chicken to be able to consume more beer. That's fine. But we already know that you're moving from one budget line to another budget line. So suppose that we were here. Now you want to increase your consumption of beer by reducing some amount of chicken. So that will be negative. This will be positive. Okay? But you want to spend as much money as before. Yeah, okay? Let's just assume that you want to use up your income still. Then essentially what this says is this. The extra money you spent on beer has to be financed by the extra money reduced, or the money reduced from spending on chicken. And they have to sum up. Yep? And that from that you get the rate of substitution between two goods. In other words, by giving up one chicken, you can get 5 more bottles of beer. Or if you want to get 1 more bottle of beer, you have to give up 1/5 of the chicken. Yeah? But okay, this is not a difficult concept, but it carries an important meaning. I want to give you the intuition. Intuition is the important bit, okay? What does that mean, okay? It tells you how much the market as a whole, now I'm taking price as given, how much the market as a whole is willing to compensate you for giving up chicken, okay? You might have your own preferences about it. You might think, oh, I really need that extra bottle of beer. I don't care about chicken, yeah? I mean, if you're going to give me 1 bottle of beer, I might be willing to give up the entire 1 whole fried chicken. I don't really care. I don't care for chicken at this point. That's you. Someone else might have a different opinion about it, okay? You might have a different opinion. You might have every one of you have your subjective individual, 다 개인적으로 다른요, 주관적인 opinion about how much you're willing to give up in terms of chicken and beer. But there's always one fixed rate determined in the market of how much the market as a whole objectively, 객관적으로, is willing to compensate you for giving up 1 dish of 1 whole chicken. So that's why it's called a market rate of substitution. So what that means is that objectively, on the whole, in the exchanged market, the market as a whole is willing to trade at a rate of 5 bottles of beer to 1 chicken. That's what it means. You have to remember this because it will become extremely important when I compare that to each one of your subjective rate of substitution. And you're going to see a very important result that actually subjective rates will have to equal market rate of substitution in equilibrium. That's where your optimal choice is going to be. But that's for the next week, so we leave that aside for the time being. Okay, let's move on. Now, we've drawn the budget line like that, but we need to know how it changes, okay? Suppose that, I don't know. Suppose 이문호 학생 has daily allowance of 매일 쓸 수 있는 용돈이 한, let's just say he has 20,000 won, okay? Yep. But suppose that for some reason he has a massive row with his mother for some reason, okay? And daily allowance is cut to 10,000 won. How is that going to affect his or her budget line? Okay, what does everyone else here think? How should the slope react? Slope should be the same. The price of 2 goods are the same. Chicken is still there at 15,000 won. Bottle of beer is still there at 3,000 won. The problem is you have less money to buy them. But the rate of substitution between the 2 goods, 5 bottles of beer to 1 whole chicken, has not changed at all. So the only thing that changes is your M, your income. You just buy less of it. So leaving the slope the same as before moves in like that. You can just buy less of it. The budget set is smaller than before. Yep. So that's called an inward parallel movement, or 안쪽으로의 평행 이동이라고 하죠, 우리말로. Okay? So the rate of substitution is unaffected, but the intercepts change. What about suppose if good won? So beer becomes more important. Okay, so suppose that the government taxes beer really heavily. Exactly. But one thing wouldn't change. What wouldn't change? M over P2. In other words, the intercept. If you're living only on chicken, the price of beer is irrelevant to you. Okay? So someone like, I really should stop using my wife as example, but my wife doesn't drink beer. Only, I don't know, only anything above 30% in alcohol she would consume. So, okay, I'm definitely not giving her the link to this OCW page, but okay. So for someone like that, I've really got to have chicken for dinner, I think. For someone like that, the rate of substitution between 2 goods is irrelevant. Yeah? But for someone consuming beer only, it's just like your income is halved. Suppose if the price of beer goes up from 3,000 won to 5,000 won, and you have, I don't know, 30,000 won in daily allowance, you only consume beer, you're living on beer, you had a really bad breakup, and I don't care about chicken, just get me drunk one way or another. Before, you could buy 10 bottles of beer and down it by yourself in your room. Now you can only buy 6 of it. So it's like an inward movement with the slope becoming steeper. Thank you, Melissa. That was exactly the correct answer. Okay? Now, so a very popular exam question for economics is like this. Very, 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 very usual trick question. It's A. What happens if the consumer's income is unchanged? That should be but, not by. But the prices of good 1 and good 2 both double. And same for the y-intercept. Thank you. Now, do you see that, right? If you double the prices of both goods, the doesn't change the slope. There's nothing relatively changing about those two products. There's still that 5 bottles of beer per 1 chicken relationship is still there. This is just like you having less income. This is the damaging thing about inflation, okay? If everything goes up by the same amount, but your income stays the same, you're worse off than before. That's the reason why the national pension to elderly only started becoming inflation-linked since about 1950. It's definitely after the Second World War. And before that, inflation really damaged their welfare and well-being. You can see why. It's like a falling income in real terms, right? So if you understand that, the second question is even easier. What happens if the consumer's income doubles as well as the prices of good 1 and 2? Yes, sir. It doesn't change at all. Yeah? It doesn't really, so units of measurement doesn't matter. Suppose that, now Anders, you're living in Denmark, okay? Yep. Suppose that Copenhagen and Seoul are the same in living terms, okay? But it's about 1,200 won to a euro, 1,400 won to a euro, something like that, isn't it? Yeah. So let's just assume that it's 1,000 won per euro, just to be clear in terms of calculation. So if beer costs 3,000 won and chicken costs 15,000 won here, and I'm earning 1 million won in income per month, I'm in exactly the same situation as if I were living in Copenhagen, earning 1,000 euro per month, but beer costs 3 euros and chicken costs 15 euros. Units of measurement don't matter in economics. It's all about relative terms. Yep? Income relative to prices. Price of one good relative to another. How you measure it, the units of measurement are irrelevant. Okay? So, given that the class is answering these two questions with relative ease, I think we have a good understanding of how this budget line works. Okay? So, from that, we can talk about a lot of different things. Okay? Suppose taxes, for example. Suppose that the government imposes a value tax on beer. Beer is bad. We're going to impose more tax. Generally, this value tax is called a ad valorem tax. Increase the value of it in Latin, which is basically a value of tax expressed in percentage terms. Okay, so a 3,000 won was what it was being sold for before in terms of beer. If you add a 10% tax on beer, then now it's being sold for 3,300 won on the market, right? How would this affect the budget constraint? So if the government imposes tax on one good, not the both, how would this affect the budget line? Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, so the slope would, just like when the price of that good changed, yeah? A tax is like a price increase of that good. On the other hand, subsidy works the opposite way. It's like a relative price decrease, okay? So a tax would do, suppose that I'm only imposing tax on good one, then it would do this. If I'm subsidizing good one, then it will be like this. Just like a price increase or a price decrease. What about rationing? Now, during times of war, or if you're living in economies like North Korea or Cuba or something like that, then we may have something called rationing. How would the budget constraint, first of all, what is rationing? Does anyone know? Yes?
It's when the government decides that each person gets so much of resources.
Yeah. So you're only allowed to consume a particular good up to a certain amount. Then the budget constraint should look like this, right? Do you see why? Even if you want to consume more beer, the government is limiting that you can only buy up to 2 crates. I don't care how much money you have. You just can't consume here. You can't go over the rationing limit. Yeah? 우리말로는 배급이라고 합니다. 배급. 배급 제한폭보다 더 많이 맥주를 소비할 수는 없겠죠. 그죠? That's why the budget set and the budget line looks like that. There's a kink in the middle. Okay, so I didn't obviously want to spend the entire lecture on this budget. So let's move on slightly faster. Now, in the textbook, in the variant textbook, there's an example of a US government food stamp program. Now, this is a very popular program. I'm not sure whether it still goes on at the moment or not, but before 1979, the program worked like this, okay? A family essentially received a subsidy on food, yeah? So you buy these stamps. Now, for a 4-person family with 2 people working and earning $200 or whatever, so in that particular case, when you pay $83 to the government, you receive 1.84 times that payment amount in food stamps. In other words, $153 worth. But you didn't have to pay exactly $83, okay? You can choose up to any amount of $83. And you could, for example, buy $40 of stamps only. You might decide to spend it on the other $43 or something else. The government didn't prevent you for that. But for every $1 of payment, you receive $1.84 worth of food that you can exchange in, say, Walmart and places like that, Costco and places. Yep. Right, let's draw this. You have the right idea, but there's one thing that you forgot to take into account. Yes?
Before?
I said no, I didn't talk about the after yet.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yeah, so.
Okay, then just like this.
Okay.
Before.
Right. Okay. I give you the, sorry about that. That wasn't particularly correct, but thank you for the try. Thank you everyone for, by the way, trying, okay? I really appreciate this. Now, you could only pay up to $83 and get $153 of food, right? So the budget constraint looked like this. What that means is you get a subsidy on the first $83 of food so that you end up with actually $153. So the rate of substitution between food and everything else is cheaper when that subsidy is kicking in. Yeah? For every dollar that you decide to buy on food stamp, you're getting a subsidy. You're getting more than what the market is willing to pay you. 1.84 times, right? Yeah? So that's why, suppose that you're not buying anything on food. I don't know, suppose you're going on an extreme diet and you don't want any food in your fridge for over the next week. Food stamp means nothing to you. You can buy as much as before, right? But for the first $83, you will use your food stamp, right? 처음 $83까지 food stamp 쓰는 게 이득이잖아요. 쓰는 게. 쓸 수 있는 한도까지는 써야죠, 그죠? So if you use up to your allotted amount, your allocated amount, then the budget line is shallower. You get more food for every $1 that you give up. $1를 기법하면 1.84달러어치의 푸드를 준대잖아요. 음식을, 식료품을. That's why the line is shallower up to 153, where your required amount, where your maximum amount of food stamp runs out. After that, it's the same as before. Yeah? I'll go over this once again, okay? If you don't use subsidy, you're as well off as before. It doesn't matter. 안 쓰면, 식료품에 돈을 안 쓰면 상관이 없어요. Then, for the first $83, you're going to use up your subsidy, and that will allow you to get more food than before. That's why the slope is shallower. 그러니까는 이제 요 기울기가 더 얕겠죠. But once you reach your maximum amount of food stamp, $153, after that, your subsidy means nothing because you've used up your maximum amount of subsidy. So from that point onwards, your budget works exactly like this. Okay? Now, problem was that this food stamp system got really complicated, and in 1979, the government decided to make the matters a lot simpler. Okay? I mean, this in itself is weirdly already very, very, very confusing, right? So the government made the matter a lot more simple. In 1979, every qualified household just got on their mail $200 of voucher. It's a little bit like what Seongnam is doing at the moment, right? 청년수당 example, right? So you're sending out every qualified person $200 of voucher, but you can only use that to buy food. Nothing else. So that voucher, I mean, there was always a black market for it, so people traded a little bit. But assuming that black market doesn't exist, how would your budget constraint look like now? So at the back, yes. Now, first of all, can we see why this is not true? The problem with this, can we just hold on for 1 second? The problem with this is assuming that you can trade the vouchers to buy other goods. 바우처를 다른 데 쓸 수 있다고 하면 이게 맞아요. It's like, no, it's not actually. It's in that case, income would go up like that. So if this case would be correct if the voucher becomes cheaper for each amount. If you give each good some sort of subsidy, then that would look correct, but that's not. So actually, let's forget about that for a second. And yes, 수학과 그죠? 네. That is correct. That's the right answer. So what this line represents is this. Even if you are consuming at the same level of other goods as before, 여기는 제가 다이어트 하느라 아무것도 음식을 안 먹는 경우죠. If I'm consuming no food and all my income on other goods, suddenly $200 voucher has appeared on my mail, and I can suddenly now use it to buy food, but not any other good. So I can't increase my consumption of other goods, but I can use this to buy food up to $200 or anywhere I want. But anything else hasn't changed, so everything else looks the same. So it's like an outward shift of the budget constraint, but excluding this area. this area only becomes available for the consumer if you can trade the voucher with someone else and try to buy another good. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is budget constraint is a very easy concept, but if you can make it complicated with subsidies, taxes, rationing, vouchers, etc., I can create a monster of a question, okay? But obviously, that's not the main point of this lecture, so I am not going to do that in the exam, but just be aware that budget constraint is not as simple as you make it out to be. If you introduce a voucher program here, subsidy on another good, what is looking simple can become actually very not simple at all, okay? So this is a sort of a food stamp or voucher program that we get a lot. So 성남시 is doing 청년수당 at the moment, right? 청년수당, so Seongnam is one of the municipalities in Gyeonggi province, and the mayor there is has introduced this initiative where 24-year-olds or 23-year-olds or something like that gets $200 a month, like to generate extra spending for the young people, okay? It's going to have exactly the same effect if you define this as goods sold in Seongnam. Now, that Seongnam시 청년수당, that voucher can only be used within Seongnam, right? It has another major purpose of generating extra income for the local economy, right? Then this is exactly the sort of picture you get with 청년수당, okay? So if you want to buy at another department store in Seoul or in Busan or any other good only sold in, say, I don't know, suppose that you want to buy 한라봉 chocolate from Jeju or something like that, okay? Then this 청년수당 is no effect. But if you want to buy goods that are actually sold in Seongnam, then this equates to extra income. You can buy more in Seongnam. Yep. So that's how you analyze the policy. Ooh, what happened here? Oh, that's how you analyze the policy effects of a new voucher program or new subsidy program or something like that. Okay. So budget constraint. It's a boring concept. Okay. A little bit of a. It's not difficult. It's quite difficult to make budget constraint interesting, but we have a lot more to say on when we begin to talk about your preferences. That's a whole different matter, okay? Now, what we discussed until now was about what can you afford. But we said nothing about what you liked or what you disliked. You as a person. That's another thing. That's another thing. You need to know what people like to be able to talk about optimal choice. Clearly, for my wife, cosmetic products and shoes, etc., are very high up on the list. I don't really care for, like much cosmetics or shoes or stuff like that. But then, in return, alcohol would be probably much higher up in my list than in my wife's list. People have different preferences, okay? So it can be as these little things as, do you want to go for an Italian or Chinese or sushi bar for your first date with someone you may or may not go out with at the moment? New term, new opportunities, new date, etc. Okay? It's not an abstract idea. Preferences about your everyday life. Do I take the bus or do I take the subway? Do I go for, say, if we go to Nanuri Shikdang here, we have about 3 different options. Do we go for the student menu A, student menu B, or the if you want to go for the faculty menu, faculty menu A, faculty menu B, whatever. It's about how you choose between different possibilities. Okay? Suppose that you want to throw in a house party with your friends and watch the football quarterfinals in the upcoming Olympics in Rio in a few months' time. And I promise that I'm not going to use beer and chicken as example anymore. Okay? Now let good 1 represent beer and good 2 represent chicken. Okay? This is the last time where chimek is going to come up as an example. Okay? I'm going to find something different at least. Suppose you might prefer, for one of you at least, might prefer 6 cans of beer and 1 whole chicken to 2 cans of beer and 2 whole chicken. Yeah? I mean, I'm watching football. You know, I don't want to eat too much, but you got to be able to have that can of beer so that if ref sends a player off, you can throw that can into the TV screen and yell and scream, I need that can. Yeah? Then you derive a greater amount of pleasure or utility, we're going to talk about that in a minute, than when you consume 2 cans of beer and 2 chicken. Then the strict preference is written like this. It's not a equality sign, but a slightly quickly curvy sign like this, okay? But you may also be indifferent between 2 consumption models. Hey, I don't really care. Human lives are full of indifferences, and that's what makes choices hard. For example, in Korea, the usual examples are, do you go for 짬뽕 or 짜장면? Most people will be, depending on the day, I mean, might be very indifferent. 간장게장 or 양념게장? Or any other example? I don't know, cream pasta or tomato-based pasta for some, maybe. Or if I go for Mexican, they always ask, do you want your peas crushed and mushed, or do you want just black beans? I'm like, I don't really care. Should I care? Should I? And then I just always say, do whatever you want, okay? That kind of stuff. Indifference means you get equal pleasure out of it. As long as that 탕수육 is there, I don't care whether I have 짬뽕 or 짜장면. Or as long as that nice bowl of rice is there, I don't care if I use 간장게장 and then just eat it with it, or 양념게장. Then this indifference, in other words, 2 consumption bundles giving you equal amount of pleasure, is written like this. That denotes indifference. In inequality signs, that would probably be equal to the equal sign. Okay? But we also have this thing called weak inequality, right? 부등호지만, 그죠? That can also be represented in a preference framework. You might either be indifferent or strictly prefer something. It's called a weak preference, just like weak inequality, right? Then the relevant sign for that is like this. Nothing too difficult about it, okay? I'll probably stop at the 3 assumptions on preference and stop the lecture today, okay? So we don't have much to go, so please pay attention for the last 10 minutes. This is really important, okay? Now, there are some obvious rules, like suppose that I might either prefer 짬뽕 to 짜장면 or might be indifferent, okay? And then I also tell you that I might also prefer 짜장면 to 짬뽕 or might be indifferent about it. How can you satisfy 2 inequalities together? Only if you're indifferent between the 2, right? 짬뽕 and 짜장면, absolutely no difference whatsoever. I don't care. Then, clearly, those 2 bundles must be indifferent. And if you know that you might either prefer 짬뽕 to 짜장면, or you might be indifferent, and then I actually give you extra piece of information, but I'm not indifferent, then the only way that you can satisfy this relationship is if you strictly prefer 짬뽕 to 짜장면. I'm suddenly rethinking my idea on having chicken for dinner. But anyway, now there are 3 additional assumptions that you must remember more than anything else when we want to talk about preferences. Okay? Off by heart. Completeness is important. Okay? If I were to give you 2 bundles, 1 dish of 짜장면 and 탕수육, what are they called? 탕짬? Or something like that, right? 탕짬면, right? Or 탕짜면, maybe. And it's a Chinese dish in Korea. There's 3 popular ones, okay? You might either weakly prefer one to the other, or weakly prefer y1 to x1, y1, y2 to x1, x2, or you might do both. Now, written down like that, it sounds really confusing. All that's saying is one thing. You must be able to rank, or at least derive. You must be able to complete a relationship. You must be able to choose between any 2 bundles. In other words, you might either prefer one to the other, prefer the other one to this one, or you might be indifferent between the 2. That's fine. But you must be able to compare the 2 options. Okay? Like, okay, here's this thing. I mean, the election's coming up. So, for example, generally, if we were to go back and think about the last presidential election, Park Geun-hye was the main candidate. Moon Jae-in was another candidate. Lee Jung-hee was the candidate dropped out. But there are always these other candidates, like, like some are more famous than others, like Ho Kyung-young, for example, and others like that, right? But if I were to give you some random candidate, candidate number 7 and candidate number 9, I don't know, whatever, 평화가정수호당, and then 호국 불교당, or whatever, or something like that. You must be able to have a preference relationship between those 2. You can prefer candidate 7 to candidate 9. You can prefer candidate 9 to candidate 7. Or you might be indifferent between candidate 7 and candidate 9. That's fine. But I am requiring that you make a preference choice between the 2 guys. That's actually a very unrealistic assumption. In other words, it's like saying, suppose if I were to ask 노진호 학생 here, who would you prefer in the upcoming election in South Sudan in May? 남수단에서 뭐 5월에 있어. There's this candidate A and candidate B and candidate C. He must be able to rank it. If I were to give you, if you were to go to a restaurant in Yeonnam-dong, I don't know, Mongnan or whatever, that's where Yeonbuk chef is, and say there's a course menu A and course menu B, and you must be able to rank it. Can you at this point? No, right? So completeness is saying that you must essentially have the right tools and right information to be able to form opinions about different options. Forming opinion. That requires information. That requires knowledge. Yeah? Some will be easier. Some will be a lot harder. Okay? Suppose that 정재학 학생, for example, here may not have, I'm just generalizing, giving you an example, may not have been to a single resort, ski resort, not once in his life, perhaps. Then I'm just suddenly going up to him and say, do you want to go to Pogwang, or do you want to go to Welihili, or do you want to go to Muju, or do you want to go to Oak Valley? Ranking is difficult under those circumstances, okay? So completeness, it's a very easy concept. Ability to form opinions. Nothing more. But in reality, in practice, that can be harder than you think, okay? Now, Second thing is even more weird, okay? Reflexivity. Any bundle is at least as good as itself. What? X1 and X2, when you compare that to X1 and X2, it must be either indifferent or preferred. Obviously, because they're indifferent. You can't be, you derive the same pleasure from the same bundle. Yeah? So you can't just suddenly prefer one to the other. They have to be indifferent. Okay? That's all reflexivity is saying, but human beings can be very, very unpredictable when it comes to this. Especially if you ask a child, like my daughter who's about 27 months old, she breaks this reflexivity a lot. She would say, I want to play with dad. I hate mom 1 minute. And I say, so you want to play with dad? No, I hate dad. I want to play with mom. What? That's a failure of reflexivity. Or it's a lot to do with something called a framing effect. Okay? There's a really famous example that I talk about all the time in behavioral finance class. There's 2 people there. I think 3 people here would know. I really should remember your name by now, but your name is Chun Son-Ak-seng. Let me give you an example. Suppose that you are the next president, okay? You have to fund one research proposal. One research proposal. Now, there are 600 patients, yeah, suffering from this really terrible disease. Okay? Now, suppose that research proposal A will save 400 lives for sure. Okay? Research proposal B has 1/3 chance of saving everyone, but 2/3 chance of saving no one. What would you choose? A, okay? Now to the second choice. There is a research proposal C which kills 200 people for sure. Research D has 1/3 chance of killing everyone, but 2/3 chance of killing no one. What are you going to choose? D? But they are the same thing. See? Saving 400 people is just like killing 200 people. Saving no one is just like killing everyone. But if you design a question differently, you can ask people to suddenly break this. Those are the same 2 good. So you should always make the same choice. But by framing the question differently, you're completely unbalanced. Now, by the way, Chun Son-Ak-seng, don't feel wrong about this. 83% of the experiment subjects in Kahneman and Tversky's famous 1978 experiment did exactly the same thing as you did. So human beings are just like that. Framing changes things a lot. And that's why reflexivity, well, so that's what when we say people are irrational. Rational people must be able to see this through. Any bundle is as good as itself, however you present it. For example, a 2% fat milk and 98% fat-free milk is the same thing. But if you put 2% fat milk on one label, 98% fat-free food on one label, generally you will see a much greater increase in sale on the second choice. Yeah? Even though same bundle should be as good as itself. Yeah? It's like that. Sounds really obvious, but this, if you complicate people's choices, if you word it differently, if you frame it differently, this reflexivity breaks down very easily. And this is where I want to end my lecture today, and I'm going to give you a very real example on this. Transitivity. Now, Suppose that if you prefer bundle A to bundle B, and if you prefer bundle B to bundle C, then it must be that you prefer bundle A to bundle C. So what I'm saying is, if you prefer one to the other, then the other one is preferred to something even worse. Then you can't go back and say, I hate this a lot more, but actually prefer to the best one. A to B, B to C, then you can't just go back and say, but I prefer C to A. But American people, being very unpredictable they are, did exactly this in the 1960s. Now, at that point, Republican Party was the party of Abraham Lincoln. Okay? So southern states, the former Confederate states, always voted Democrat. Okay? But there was a huge division between Democrats based in the north, like New York and Boston, and Democrats based in Atlanta and deep Mississippi and Alabama. There was a huge division in terms of like racial preference. Okay? So the Southern Democrats were called Dixiecrats. Now, what happened during late 1960s, if you ask people, if you do a poll, suppose that if you place Republicans against, suppose that you place Democrats, the Northern Democrats from Boston, against Dixiecrats from Deep South, Atlanta. Then, generally, Republicans choosing between the two they preferred Northern Democrats. They were really, slavery, the past, all racial segregation, not really comfortable with that, okay? But if you placed Republican against a Northern Democrat, okay, then generally in the opinion polls, Republicans won. Because Southern Democrats absolutely hated people like John F. Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson to the extent that they are more willing to vote for the other party. So the preference relations went like, Northern Democrats preferred to the Dixiecrats, but Republicans preferred to Northern Democrats. So if the transitivity is to work, if you place Republicans and Southern Democrats, i.e. Dixiecrats, Republicans should win, right? But Democrats were larger in number, and Northern Democrats were actually still loyal to their party. So they preferred the Southern Democrats. So Dixiecrats came out ahead in opinion polls. Crazy times. Complete breakdown of transitivity. So Republicans were preferred to Northern Democrats, who were then preferred to Southern Democrats, who were preferred to Republicans. What? That can't happen. But in real life, if you devise and design people's preferences in a different way, that transitivity assumption breaks down so quickly. And in politics and in elections, it's something that we see really often. So what I'm just trying to tell you through this is that at first glance, the three rules I talked about today, completeness, reflexivity, and transitivity, seem like very simple rules. But in real life, not one of them holds strictly true at all. People are irrational. So the moral of the story is, if you're more interested in this, please take my behavior finance class in 4th year.